All right. Today's lesson is about nails and hammering. It might seem like a simple subject, but there actually is a lot more to it. So, first off, a hammer. This is what carpenters use every day. I almost consider a hammer as something like a medieval knight would always carry around their sword. Carpenters always have their hammers. Now, there's a lot of different types of hammers out there, but they basically have these main components. They have a claw, face, and the handle. Right here on the side, we like to call that the cheek. And we'll get into this a little bit later here with the different types of hammers. So the first two types have to deal with the claw itself. Now you have this first one with straight claws, and we call that a rip hammer. And that's for tearing boards apart. You can get those straight claws between two boards that are nailed together. Maybe you got to pry them apart. Works perfect for that. Perfect for grabbing boards. Mainly used for framing. Framing meaning nailing 2x material together, 2x4s, 2x6s together. And the weight is usually between 16 to 28 ounces. Bigger hammer. This hammer right here is a smaller hammer. It's a curved claw, and you can see the curve. It's like the claws are swept, and these are great for pulling nails, especially small nails like trim nails. Now this was like the original style hammer. These are usually about 16 ounces or less. Not super popular anymore because we got a lot of other tools to pry nails other than this. And this thing is not meant for prying boards together or grabbing boards. So, talking about the faces themselves, there's two different types of faces. You have a smooth face and then you have a milled face. Now, this milled face is meant for grabbing nails. We also call this a milled waffle face because it looks like a waffle iron. So when you hit a nail, if you ever try to sink a nail in a piece of wood, sometimes the hammerhead glances off the nail and it kind of makes the nail bend over and stuff like that. So if you're doing a lot of hand nailing, you have something like this gripper for the nail head and it reduces the glancing. All right. The problem is that this waffle face makes a mark on the wood after you nail in the nail. So if you're making anything that's going to be the finished product, you're not going to want to use one of these hammers like trim or anything like that, or like nice trim boards. You don't want to see a bunch of this waffle pattern in your wood. Now, the basic hammer that's good for everything is a smooth face. I know some crews, deck builders don't allow mill faces on their job site just because of all the marks it leaves, that you have to have a smooth face because it really is great for everything. So, yeah, you do have the glancing of the nails at times with the smooth face, but if you wear it in, that smooth face, it actually isn't too bad. The other thing you can do is you can use sandpaper and kind of just sand and scratch it up a little bit, and it'll give you a little bit of grab and not anything terrible that's going to dent your wood like the waffle face. There's a lot of different types of hammers out there. There's the titanium hammers, and you can switch out the stiletto. You can switch out the front face to it, so that's kind of nice. You can, if you want to go to a milled, you can do that. If you want to go to a smooth, you can put that on. So that's pretty nice. You can also do, um, the Martinez here in the upper corner. And what's going on with that is that there you can replace the actual head of the hammer. So that's kind of nice because on these stilettos, sometimes you break off the claw, and then you're kind of like, oh, well, that's great. So with this, these are expensive hammers, over $300 hammers. With the Martinez, if you break the claw, at least the rest of it's good. You can just put another head on. You have Boss hammers that have like a squaring system to it, and that's kind of nice. It actually has a speed square. I mean, they say it's accurate. I have a Boss hammer, a couple of them. I'd like never use it for this feature, but I guess it's there if I want it. This is a rigging axe. This used to be popular probably about 100 or so years ago when the wood wasn't great quality from the lumber yards, and you can kind of hew it a little bit with the axe handle, with the axe head to it, and then you have like a framer head on the other end. This is a hardcore hammer that has a recessed middle face. So if you do kind of hit the nail hard, you don't get that waffle pattern because it's recessed. So it's kind of best of both worlds. I never swung one, but it probably works pretty well, I would assume. Cat's paws. So talking about handles, the wooden ones, they tend to break at times, especially at the neck if you're pulling nails and prying stuff. So if you're doing any kind of demolition work, you're going to want to use one of these steel or titanium ones. Now, if you got a wooden handled hammer, to prevent this is that you just use these cat's paws that dig out the nails. We call them a cat's paw nail puller. Use the end, you get underneath the nail, and you kind of just pry it up, and then your hammer can do the rest. So this thing is really just meant to expose the nail head, so your hammer can then pull it out. Parts of the nail, you have the head, and then obviously you have the shank, and then you have the tip. All right, so pretty simple. So nail styles aren't so simple because the pennies, we use what we call the penny system, and that the word penny is signified with the letter D. D, it was a symbol for like the old Roman coin, and it has all have to do with, it's a penny, 16 pennies for a pound, like a pound of like these different nails. It's just how the system works. So we just call it pennies. All right, 16 penny nail, 8 penny nail, that kind of thing. All right, even though the D says otherwise. All right, so really the only ones you need to know are the 8 penny nail and the 16 penny nail, because those are the ones that we use for framing the most, and that's what we usually do. 8 penny nails are for nailing sheeting onto the framing, like subfloor and wall and roof sheeting, and the 16 penny nails are for the nailing the 2x together. All right. So there is a nail sizing chart and everything like that. If you really want to look at everything, 16 penny nails are usually 3.5. 8 penny nails are usually 2.5. Biggest thing here is that you always want to nail the thinner piece to the thicker piece. So we have like a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood here. We're going to want to nail that from the plywood under the 2x framing. You wouldn't want to nail it from the other way. That's just how things are done. All right, so always the thinner to the thicker. So there's 3 main types of nailing. You have end nailing, which is face nailing and toe nailing. Face nailing is nailing from one face of a board into the other. It's really strong connection there. End nailing is nailing from the face of one board into the end grain of the other, making kind of like a T shape. Not as strong. This is probably your weakest connection, even though that's how we frame walls. But usually that's just to hold the studs together. We really rely on the sheathing to hold the wall, and that's really what gives us that strength. And you have toe nailing, which is really strong connection. It's angled from the face of one into the face of the other. The key here is that you get enough of the nail in each board. So like 50% of the nail was in this one, 50% of the nail was in that. Now, one thing that can happen is that you get too low or it's too high, and then you've got very strong connection. So if it's too low on this, it's not going to be a strong connection. Too high, it's not going to have enough grab into the board that you're trying to nail into. So end nailing, face nailing, and toe nailing. So common nails are just regular nails. They're usually a dull gray, silvery color. These are just your basic nails. They call them common because they're the most common nails out there, and they're uncoated, and they're usually called bright nails because they're uncoated. Now, the nails that we actually use down in the shop and what most framers use are these. They're called sinker nails, and they have a vinyl coating on them that's yellow, and it makes it easier to drive the nails. Now, they're called a sinker nail because the nail head is a little thinner. They have a checked head, and that little thinner nail head makes it easier to just sink into the wood. All right. They're also usually a little bit shorter than common nails, 3 1/4 for a 16 penny sinker, and that's really because of like the hole sinking it and everything like that. Sinker nails are just fine. Most framers use them. If you ever try nail common, And then you try to nail sinker, the common nail is just way harder to nail in. Finished nails are usually very small. They have a small head on them. That's because the head's meant to be driven into the wood, and then you fill it with putty for trim, baseboard, and that kind of stuff. You can see the nail heads below it, and then you fill it in. So those are trim nails. These are for like finished products and stuff like that. So you're not meant to ever see the actual nail head. Duplex nails have two heads. That's for any kind of temporary work like concrete forming. So you sink it down to the first head, and then the other head is exposed because just like in concrete forms, you build this, fill it with concrete, and then you have to strip the form and pull all the nails. It makes it a lot easier not to get your cat's paw out and dig the nail heads out. It's a lot nicer just to have that nail head exposed, and then you can just pry it out easily. Roofing nails are usually shorter with a very large head. These are for nailing down asphalt roof sheathing, asphalt roofs like the shingles. All right, and also you can use them for putting on vinyl siding, but the large head is to keep the shingles down onto the roof. All right, so if you build anything outside, it has to have a coating on it, like galvanization. And so this is what these nails are. They're dipped in molten zinc, and now they have a coating. Now they're not going to rust. So you can see the coating here on a galvanized nail versus like a bright nail. So it's pretty much I just take a bright nail, coat it with this, and then it's not going to rust anymore. If you leave out a box of commons or sinkers over the weekend and it rains, you're probably going to come back on Monday with a whole box of rusty nails. Now there's three main different shank types. Obviously we've been talking about the smooth ones, but there's some other ones where you have these rings, and that kind of grabs the fibers of the wood more. So they're a lot harder to pull out. A lot of exterior projects have ring shank nails, such as pole barns, and they are really hard to get out. Then you have spiral shank or twisted, and this kind of takes a little bit off like what a screw does and like twisting the wood and makes it a lot harder to get out. Usually spiral shanks are for deck boards or like roof trusses or something like that. All right, where you don't want the things to fall apart. There's you got smooth, spiral, and ring. All right, this concludes a lesson on nails and hammers.